Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this guest narration done by Wyrian, who came in clutch to help me while I recover from the Rona. And as always, I hope that you enjoy.
Penal Colony by Vansir Al-Morir. Surveyor's personal log, transcribed from dictaphone recordings and submitted for the consideration of the United Galactic Federation Council, an addendum to the official report. The planet designated DW953 is a penal colony. How else do you account for the presence of a sentient species on a death world? The gravity alone would crush 70% of known species as soon as they deactivated their ship's inertial dampeners, and would cripple or severely impair the other 30%. Not to mention the rampant tectonic and volcanic activity, the poisonous toxins, the deadly predators, or the fact that the planet is so tilted on its axis that nearly the entire habitable surface of the planet vacillates wildly between temperature extremes over the course of a single standard cycle. And all of that is secondary to the fact the ancestor-forsaken rock is blasted with near lethal levels of solar radiation, from a yellow sun no less. No sentient species could possibly have evolved under those terrestrial conditions, let alone beneath the scorching glare of an unshielded fusion reactor like the system's star. That was the analysis of the original surveying team sent from the Council of the Galactic Federation. Further analysis of the cultural and technological artifacts conducted by our team has confirmed the original speculation. The entire prison seems to be run by a collection of gangs, whose power and prominence within the prison population is directly correlated to the amount of territory, resources, and population they control. The larger gangs have made attempts to self-regulate, understanding the disadvantages of prolonged conflict. Major clashes appear to be genocidal in nature, waged with the intent of subsuming or utterly destroying the enemy in his entirety. The attempt to self-regulate has thus far been hampered by the violent tendencies of the deviant individuals sentenced to life on this penal world. Minor scuffles between rival gangs are a constant occurrence, and fairly accepted by the majority of inmates. These conflicts are waged with a disregard for the habitability of the planet itself, in some cases leaving swaths of otherwise habitable territory completely barren of sentient life. It is when looking at the recreational activities of the inmates that we may get a glimpse of the offenses for which they were exiled from their native civilization, as these pursuits are nearly all violent in one form or another. There is a particularly popular spectacle of a gladiatorial nature in which the participants don armor to simulate small-scale battles, complete with unarmed combat over the possession of an object that appears to be the inflated bladder of an animal. There are varying forms of this type of gladiatorial contest, each with its set of rules, both with and without varying levels of weaponry or armament permitted. Another particularly confusing and exceptionally violent form of contest takes place on a field of ice, with the participants wielding clubs while balanced on blades strapped to the ends of their legs. These are just a few of the most salient examples. Enumerating all forms of recreational violence pursued by these inmates, even in passing, would take hours. Suffice it to say they are many, varied, and disturbing. Technologically, the denizens of this prison world show a desperate desire to escape the harsh conditions of their confinement. Implements gathered by the UGF surveying team show no evidence of FTL technology or anti-gravity capability. Instead, the inmates have, repeatedly, bolted cockpits on top of several tons of highly unstable chemical accelerants, and ignited the entire contraption. Most shockingly, they managed this successfully. More than once. Naturally, there have been predictable consequences, yet the remainder of the inmates appear to be resolute in their chosen course. This action merely proves how desperate these prisoners are to escape their confinement. The manufacturing processes utilized by these assignees shows a disregard of the ecosystem of the prison world. This may be taken as evidence that the inmates wish to leave the planet, even at the cost of destroying their prison behind them. Given the conditions of such a hostile world, one can hardly blame them. Despite the mountain of circumstantial evidence compiled both here and enumerated more fully in the official report, I must confess to a nagging doubt. We have as yet found no evidence of outer system monitoring of the prison. My colleagues have advanced the theory that the civilization responsible for establishing this penal world may have trusted to the world's high gravity and the inmates' lack of technological prowess to keep the prisoners bound to their hell rock in perpetuity. This is a reasonable theory. However, I can't help but feel that this seems a short-sighted course of action for a civilization capable of colonizing worlds outside of its native star system. Also, there is the matter of the parent civilization. No evidence of an FTL-capable civilization colonizing this arm of the galaxy has yet been found. It is true that there remain large swaths of territory in this region of the galactic halo still to be mapped, but inroads are being made daily and still no evidence has appeared. Officially, the surveying team has advanced a single cohesive theory, replete with evidence that DW-953 is a penal world. In all of its official reports, there is, however, another possibility that has remained unspoken since the beginning of our investigation. It is a possibility so horrifying in its implications that we are loath even to speak it aloud amongst ourselves. It is possible that there is no parent civilization, that the species we have encountered on the planet designated DW-953, locally known as Earth, evolved to sentience on the most hostile planet yet found to support life. And that species, for whom violence is a form of leisure, who rose to dominance in the deadliest environment yet encountered by the UGF, is coming. This is, of course, mere speculation, which, as the leader of the expedition, I am duty-bound to present to the UGF Council. It strains credulity to believe that any species could have evolved to sentience under such harsh conditions, and is outright laughable to believe that any sentient species could demonstrate such wanton violence towards other members of the same species, or such flagrant disregard for their homeworld. I expect the expeditionary teams to contact the parent civilization of the DW-953 prison world any day now. Earth is a penal colony. Right? Pluto, by Aussie Endeavor. Humanity and the Chronites had been at war for almost a full Earth decade. At the start of the war, the rest of the galaxy was concerned for the humans, as they usually tried to avoid conflict at all costs. Though, and I'm very ashamed to admit this, a morbid curiosity took hold in the back of my mind. After all, while the history of the humans before FTL travel is widely unknown, we do know that war was far from uncommon among the factions of Earth. The humans fought valiantly, but the Chronites were too much. In a few years, a quarter of humanity was gone. That rose to almost a third by the next. 7 years into the conflict, a few stray ships even managed to punch their way into the Sol system itself and bombarded a colony on a planet called Mars before being destroyed. Humanity seemed doomed to fall until they called for a meeting. I was there on that ship, a human representative nearby. We were positioned near the Cronite home planet Torak and began the transmission. "So, has humanity finally come to its senses?" the Cronite taunted. The human ignored it and began. "I was sent here from the Sol system to discuss that. Yes, the complete surrender of humanity. We gladly accept and demands will be sent shortly." I looked to the human, expecting shock or rage. Instead, I found pity and a hint of dread. "Actually, I'm here to discuss the unconditional surrender of the Cronite Empire." The bridge was silent, all of us looking at the human in disbelief. The silence hung in the air for a moment before being pierced by the shrieking wail I recognized as Cronite laughter. "I see the humans have kept their sense of humor after all this bloodshed. If you do not surrender immediately, then humanity will have no other choice but to—" "Do your worst then, go on. The human fleet is in shambles after our last assault. You would be lucky to get to our outermost star system." The human was silent for a moment. He looked the Cronite in the eye and said, "I'm sorry. After the transmission was cut, we picked up on a large energy reading originating from near Torak, steadily growing stronger. The computer identified it as the destination for a human warp drive, but something was off. It was too powerful. It had to be to warp something right into the heart of Cronite space. And it kept growing. At first I thought it was trying to warp in a large battle station or something, but it wouldn't stop. Eventually it got so strong it started to overload our computer, and then space ripped open. Now, where moments ago was empty space, was something I never could have imagined possible to warp. A planetoid. It was hurtling towards Torak. I stared at the human, then back to the planetoid, getting closer to Torak by the second. What the hell?" I exclaimed. The rest of the crew seemed to be equally freaking out. "It's called Pluto," the human said to me. "Ninth planet of the Sol system, named after the god of the dead from a mythology long gone." Ironic. Why? How? Earth had finally had enough. They were to give a final chance for surrender before using their last resort. I wish it was different, but it's not my choice. The human's face was stained with tears, and just before the collision, he looked down and closed his eyes. The memory of that day will stick with me for all my days. That was the day 2 star systems both lost a planet. The Kronite Empire fell to pieces in the aftermath, and the Sol system was racked with the scars of war. That was the day humanity finally showed their history to the rest of the galaxy. The representative's last words to me before we left that system will follow me forever. In war, there are no victors.
The algorithm reckons you should be watching this video next, and I recommend that you should be always watching my video. So, click with energy! And yes, clicking that does help the channel. Thank you very much. I just want to give a quick thanks to the Tier 5 patrons and channel members. Alithia, Barky, Fudic Yol, Cam Maxwell, Caspar Onholtz, White Van 420, Lord Azrakal, Arcadian, and Oakfield.